What is your best met the high school jerk/bully as an adult story? I own my own gym and have for a few years now. I received a message one day from a familiar-looking name on the business's Facebook page from a woman asking to come try us out. We set it up, she comes in for an introduction. She's a very, very large and out-of-shape woman at this point. After about 5 minutes of working with her, it hits me that this lady used to be about half her current size and was an absolute bee back in her heyday. I decided not to bring it up to her as she appeared to be struggling in life and came to us in a time of need, and I took it, as I do with all of my clients, as a cry for help. Not to mention, I'm a grown man now, and that seemed pretty silly and insignificant in life today. Months later during one of the classes, I noticed her struggling real hard, so I go over to offer some encouragement. As I lean down to say something to her, I notice she's crying faintly to herself. She looks up at me and quietly says, "Sorry for how nasty I was to you years ago, and thank you for doing this for me." Turns out an old mutual friend told her about my place and she recognized me as the owner and came to me on purpose. No, not a story of revenge or retribution, but she reached out to someone she was terrible to, and today, she's repurposed, and I find it to be quite inspiring. Not quite the same, but about 10 years ago, I caught my dad screaming at the TV. "This friggin' jerk got his own show! He was such a piece of crap when we were kids. He would beat you up for your lunch money, push you for no good reason, take your toys, and based on the way he acts now, it doesn't seem like he grew up much." He was talking about Paul Toodles Sr. from American Choppers. We met at a bar where a large number of our high school class happened to be. He described me as his arch enemy. I realized I hadn't even thought about him in 10 years. She got the whole middle school through junior high to call me gay. I was not gay. She is. She came out of the closet right after high school. I was a jerk in high school. Then I went through the karma-mandated fat phase. Made a guy's day when he saw me at work. I went from pretty dang fine in high school to man the harpoons. I'm also nicer. He came in and said, "Wow, the fanciful unicorn?" And I said, "Yep, does this make it feel better?" and spread out my arms. He responded, "Heck yeah, you were a jerk." I said sorry. I was pretty immature. And then we talked like normal adults. Moved to a new school in 7th grade and was doing fine. Making friends, good grades. Then somehow ran afoul of this bigger kid. He'd been held back a few times. Typical bully, pushed little kids into lockers, loved to torment girls, and ran with a pack of acolytes who adored and aped him. In Texas at the time, if a kid didn't like you, he, quote, called you out, challenged you to a fight after school. Well, Zed calls me out one day because I was a, quote, queer from New York. Clueless me, moved there from said New York where people are civilized, I said, sure, okay. A few days later, in front of his acolytes and a small group of my friends, he proceeds to beat the crap out of me. It was 7th grade, so the damage wasn't excessive, mostly to my pride. Spent the rest of middle school known as one of the guys Zed beat the crap out of. Fast forward about 7 years, home from college and going to the grocery store for mom. Who should I see bagging my goodies but Zed? Taking a look at him, I see a horrible scar running from the top of his head down around the back of his skull and neck and under his shirt. His face lights up when he sees me, and he says in slightly slurred speech, "Hey, didn't we go to school together? We're friends from school, right?" He walks with me out to the parking lot, and as we walk, I learn that he had been hit by a car in high school while biking home one day. Accident required a half dozen surgeries, and it left Zed mentally impaired and a completely different person. He put my stuff in the car, shook my hand for a good 30 seconds, and kept asking me to, quote, come back and see me sometime. I had hated few people in my life to that point, and no one more than him. Almost cried driving home. I felt so bad for him and disgusted with myself for my previous hatred. I ran into somebody in high school that I used to pick on regularly when we were in 1st or 2nd grade. We recognized each other, and I walked up to him. We exchanged a few words, since I hadn't seen him in close to 10 years, and then didn't talk again. But right before we parted ways, I apologized for the way I treated him as a child. I couldn't stress how sorry I was for being a piece of crap to him for no other reason than I felt like it. I still occasionally think about him and where he's at in life. I work in a jail. I've seen the, quote, popular kids on the other side of the bars. I ran into my high school bully at a gay bar a few years back. He was my bottom that night. One of mine was this kid named Patrick. One incident led to 2 of my ribs being broken when he jumped on my chest with his knees. Another resulted in a broken eye socket after being kicked in the face by him and 2 of his friends. Eventually, I moved in with my father and didn't see any of my old bullies again, except for a few. Some have been relatively nice, and some are jerks. During high school, I took some martial arts classes, taekwondo. I was always a larger kid, but too timid to fight back, but martial arts helped me to overcome that. Fast forward to a year or 2 after high school, and I go over to visit my mother. She had moved in with a real jerk who was into God knows what. And guess who's there? Patrick. He's now almost a foot shorter than me, skinny as a middle school girl, and was undoubtedly on meth. I later found out he also did heroin and a myriad of other drugs. We end up talking, and I tell him about how I have sinus trouble because of the beating I got from him and his friends. He laughed. I looked around at my younger brother, who had got very skinny from not eating, and sister, the environment they were in, and right then I made a decision. I turned to my mother and said, "I don't give a crap if this is the kind of people you want to be around," indicating the piece of crap next to me, "but we are leaving." So I piled my siblings in my car and brought them home with me. They shortly moved in with my father officially and have been much better off since. Patrick made a comment about me, quote, disrespecting him and my mother, and I told him he had no respect for himself, obviously, so who is he to talk like that? He went to hit me and I just stared at him. He dropped his fist quick after I stared him down for what felt like an hour. TLDR, met middle school bully, he's a meth head, was living with my mother, took my siblings and left after verbally sparring with him. Feels good, man. Edit. Wow, this got a lot more karma than I thought. Didn't have time to write this up earlier, but to clear a few things up, he didn't bang my mother. I don't think. He was basically just there all the time like drug addicts are wont to do. My mother was living, and screwing, her boyfriend at the time, whose house it actually was. And the thought of snapping him like a twig did occur to me, but that paled in comparison to what he was doing to himself. If he didn't clean his ways up by now, he's likely dead or in prison. Beating the crap out of him wouldn't have made me feel any better. Plus, it's a lot easier on the knuckles. When I was a kid, I was fat. I used to get picked on all the time by this kid at church named Rusty. He was about 5 years older than me, and every couple of weeks, he would beat me up. I moved away when I was about 14, and thankfully, I didn't have to deal with him anymore. When I went to college, I decided to get my act together and get healthy. To that end, I started taking mixed martial arts. I did it for about 2 years and lost about 40 pounds. When I graduated, I moved back to where I was from and started looking for a new MMA gym. I went to the most reputable one, and who should be there but Rusty? It sounds too good to be true, but I swear to God it happened. He hadn't changed a bit. The first thing he said to me was, "Finally trying to learn to defend yourself, huh?" I had called ahead, and the instructor knew my deal and had arranged for me to come watch. I left my gear in the car. At the end of class, they do free rolling, jiu-jitsu sparring. Rusty comes up to me, having no knowledge that I am the least bit experienced, and starts begging the instructor to let him spar me, so he can, quote, show me the ropes. After all, he's been in MMA for 3 months now, and he never misses a UFC pay-per-view. I went outside and changed. Long story short, we sparred and I choked him out 3 times. Afterwards, I signed up for classes, he grabbed his bag, left, and never came back. This is my favorite story out of everything that has happened in my life thus far. I'm the only person I know that got to beat up my childhood bully as an adult. I was in need for an accountant job, so I searched several websites of businesses. I came across a very worthy company, so I wanted to apply. While I was filling out the form, I looked around the website some more and saw the name of the head chief of the company. I was depressed for the rest of the day. My high school bully who bullied me every day is now the head chief of his own freaking business. I'm an accountant. It doesn't always work out. This one is a classic. This girl used to torment me all through high school and middle school, really went out of her way to tear me down. Whenever we had a class together, she would make her extreme dislike for me apparent, and, of course, other kids followed. I couldn't open my mouth without some kind of ridicule. Of course I was miserable, and my dad would try to cheer me up. Don't worry, kiddo. One day, she'll be working at a McDonald's and serving you fries. He actually referred to her as McDonald's for years. A couple years after graduating high school, I went to a Hardee's with my dad, and there was McDonald's behind the counter. I go up to place my order, and before I finish, she says, "You don't remember me, do you?" Oh, I remember you. Oh, so would you like fries with that? Why, yes. Yes, I would. Way to go, Dad. Called it 9 years in advance. I had an evil 5th grade teacher who made my life terrible for a year. She even instigated a quote, pick on Stoops day. I saw her at the bar where my friend worked. The day before this, we had invented a shot that tastes like urinal cake smell, Captain Morgan's Lime Bite mixed with Miller High Life. I bought my old teacher and her friends around from across the bar. I made eye contact and raised my shot of Wild Turkey. They gave me a curious look, but took the urinal cake shots nonetheless. My old teacher proceeded to throw up on the bar and get 86th from one of the only bars in town. Screw you, Mrs. Freeman! My sister has since become really good friends with her childhood tormentors. The sad part to me is that the reason she was able to patch things up was that she was a very late bloomer and ended up the kind of popular person they wanted to be friends with. I guess she kind of sold out and became friends with them? How on earth the topic never comes up amongst them, I do not know. Maybe it's her long-term plan to enact revenge, gain trust, destroy them, preferably by dumping pig's blood on their heads at a formal event of some kind. My dad is a very large man. We're talking 6'7", 300 pounds big. He would always tell me this story to cheer me up when girls would be jerks to me. He was pretty chubby in high school, so he played football and was good at it, but just really loved playing basketball. So his freshman year, he tried out for the team and didn't make it. The coach, who was a history teacher at the school, stated his weight as an issue. Fair enough. He worked hard to lose some weight over the summer, blah blah blah. Enter sophomore year. Ends up having the coach as his history teacher. Great, he thinks. He could be a good student and hopefully get on the team. Wrong. This adult man decided to call my father names related to his weight and harass him in front of the class. Not cool, but my dad was too proud and never said anything. Ended up making varsity his sophomore year because of a coaching change. Fast forward about 5 years. My dad was working as a bouncer at a bar in a nearby town to where he went to school. It was a regular night when who walks in? Jerk history teacher. Perfect. He thinks, I'll let it go, be professional, until he recognizes my dad as, quote, the chubby kid who was a coward. My dad looks at him and says, Sir, I think you've had too much to drink. It's time for you to go home. The coach is saying, No, I'm fine, etc., etc. My dad grabs him by the shirt and says, No, it's time for you to step outside. You've had too much to drink. The coach decides to swing at my dad, and that's when he loses it. He states, This is for all the kids you called fat, you piece of crap, and proceeds to beat the tar out of him. A long story, I know, but my favorite by far. My dad and his old bouncer friends always tell it when they got together, too. Ah, revenge. Content warning, this one's pretty violent. My dad did something similar. He grew up as a poorish farm boy in Ireland. All he ever wanted to do was sing in the church Christmas Day show. He bought himself a guitar and taught himself to play, but his headmaster at school wouldn't let him, or any of the family for that matter, perform in it. Fast forward about 30 years, we are back in Ireland for my grandfather's funeral, and we walk into my cousin's pub, and sitting at the bar is this old man. I had never seen my dad so angry before in my life. His face was purple with anger at the sight of this guy. He decked this old man so hard he knocked him off his bar stool and onto his back. My dad crouched down inches from his face and said, Get out before I punch you for every boy you laid eyes on. This old man looked like he was going to crap himself and ran out of there as fast as he could. I was mortified and felt awful for this old man until my dad told me what this man was doing. He was touching the boys from school. He would take his picks and basically cycle through them as he saw fit. The boys not being touched didn't get away easy either. They were hit with a shillelagh until they bled. My dad hated this man and says that had he found him when he was a drinking man, he may have killed him. TLDR, my dad decked an old man for kitty diddling his friends. This is kind of morbid. In the 6th grade, I was friends with this kid. I remember one day telling him about an episode of Rescue 911 that I saw, where a guy was driving an ATV in a field and didn't see that there was a barbed wire. Fast forward a year, and this kid started to make really mean comments about me. He would make fun of my appearance and how my family had no money in front of everyone. I am from an immigrant family, and he would always tell me to go back to my country. Middle school was really tough on me because of kids like him, but held back from fighting him because I knew nothing good would come from it. Fast forward to the summer after high school graduation, that kid was driving an ATV in a field, didn't see the barbed wire, and was decapitated. Weird that 7 years prior, I had described to my future tormentor exactly how he will die. I've got two. I was picked on a lot. About 10 years ago, I got a temporary job at Kroger. It was just stocking shelves, and I had another restaurant job lined up, but needed something for about 2 months while I went through a lengthy hiring process there. Spoiler, I wound up getting an even better job elsewhere and wound up never taking that. So, I go to get my check on my first payday at Kroger and find out the manager at the front is one of the guys who used to bully the crap out of me in high school. He made small talk for a minute. "Hey, how you been? Good to see you." He clearly remembered. Once everyone walked away, he leaned in and said, "Hey, deprecated zero, I'm really sorry for all the crap I did to you in school. I was a stupid jerk kid." I smiled, held out my hand, thanked him, and told him it's all in the past. That was really cool. The other is less cool but hilarious to me. This girl was, quote, the prom queen, basically. The stereotypical mean girl dating the football player. My opinion of her was always that she was just spoiled, worthless, and dumb. I don't usually take joy in other people's misfortune, but I felt schadenfreude in unparalleled amounts the day I walked into Buffalo Wild Wings and saw her standing behind the counter. This is maybe 10 years out of high school. She looks exactly the same. Put on some weight maybe, but hair still done the same. She still looks like she got Effie Trinket to do her makeup, so on. You could tell at a glance that she's never mentally moved past 8th grade. I asked how she'd been, tried to politely talk to her because, hey, I want people to do well. She was a jerk. Was like, "Ew, you're deprecated zero." I just raised my eyebrows at her and let it go. Long story short, her boss was my roommate. I asked him about her. Single mother, just got kicked out of her mom's house. He just hired her like 2 weeks earlier. He confronted her about talking down to customers and wound up firing her. Felt like justice. I lucked out and didn't really garner any enemies while in middle school and high school. Mostly because I was the poor kid at a snobby private school in Nashville, Tennessee, until I moved in 9th grade and nobody would talk to me. There was this one really obnoxious boy in one of my classes in 7th grade though, treated everyone like handmaids, but the parents had money, so nothing was ever really done about it. Ran across his Facebook page the other day. His parents just bought him his second Lamborghini because he wrecked the first one. I try not to hold animosity towards anyone, but I hope somebody keys his car. I was working in a video rental store in Houston, circa 1989, about 2 years after I graduated high school. In comes a girl that had always been awful to me from 10th grade to graduation. She would cross a room just to say something mean, and I had no history with this girl at all. I had never actually said a word to her. All our exchanges were just her saying something mean to me. I didn't even know her last name. I must have reminded her of someone. She comes into the store and sheepishly said that she wanted 3 dirty movies. She didn't seem to remember me. She said her best friend was getting married and she wanted some dirty movies for the bachelorette party. The shop had a small adult room that you had to access by coming behind the counter, but she didn't want to go in there. She asked me to select 3 films. She was squirming with embarrassment as I tried to find out what she was, quote, into, and kind of acted like I thought the films were for her and her alone. She said, "Just grab 3 good ones, I don't care." So I selected 3, all lesbian adult films, and she slunk out with them. I would have loved to see the look on their faces when they popped those tapes in. She returned them through the night drop so she wouldn't have to look anyone in the eye when she brought them back. She rented on her parents' account. I sent a notice through the mail to her parents that, quote, Mona's 3-way slit party had been returned damaged and they owed us $30. Met a kid that was an absolute brute in high school. Thought he was tough stuff. I think I only went face to face with him once over some dumb crap about him threatening a friend of mine. No real fight ever came from it, but he was definitely an enemy. Met him randomly in an airport halfway across the country maybe 4 years after high school. He was the nicest guy. The Marines beat the stupid right out of him. I was playing poker in Atlantic City about 7 years ago, and one of the guys that bullied me, Chad, sat at my table. There's no way he recognized me. I was actually playing on a no-limit hold'em table while waiting for a seat to open in a 2-way high-low game. Anyway, I stayed at the NLHE table just to take his money. I played probably 95% of the pots he was in. He was pretty drunk and wasn't very good. I got close to $600 off of him in a little over an hour before he decided to quit. I have no idea what he does for a living, but I am 100% sure he is a big loser when he plays cards. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.